Hi, I'm Lenora Bresler. Welcome to another edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. It is January the 30th, 2017, and we are embarked on a multi-session series on how to study a Bible passage. We've been talking about all kind of things like when something happens, where it happens, the importance of names, and now we are looking at the importance of looking immediately before and immediately after the passage that you're studying to see the context and to see if perhaps you are meant to read two things together to understand its more robust meaning. We talked yesterday about this and the fact that sometimes chapters don't help us. Chapters were added much later in the 15th century, and so sometimes we're really in the original meant to read straight through, and so perhaps the connections of these stories might have been more evident to people who did not have the convenience of the chapters and verses. Now, I'm going to give you another example of where it is important to pay attention to what happens beforehand and afterhand in order to understand what a passage means. One of the most confusing stories about Christ appears in different ones of the Gospels, but we're going to focus on Mark chapter 11. This is the story of the cursing of the fig tree. Now, frankly, when even devout Christians read that passage, they think Jesus has gone a little bit nuts. Frankly, it's like crazy. What in the world is going on? Jesus has just come from overturning the tables in the temple, and he's walking along, and he sees a fig tree by the side of the road, and there are leaves on the tree, which makes him think that there's going to be fruit. So he reaches up and looks for some fruit. There is no fruit. So what does he do? He seems to be throwing a little bit of a temper tantrum or something, and he curses the tree, and he says it will never more show fruit, and goes on down the way, and a couple days later, or the next day, I should say, it's all withered up and gone. And, you look at that and you say, wait a minute, this is bizarre. First of all, why is Christ cursing an inanimate object? And why would he be upset with a fig tree anyway? Because the Gospels also tell us specifically it was not the time of year for there to be fruit on the fig tree. He would have known that. That would have been common knowledge to everybody. So what's he doing being upset with a fig tree anyway? It's a very bizarre scenario. Unless you figure out that it's meant to be read in conjunction with something else. Remember, I told you that he's coming directly from overturning the tables in the temple. Now, what was he so upset about? He was upset because Israel had been designed since the beginning of history to be a light to the world. You know all those strange rules and laws back in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, things that we don't think apply to us anymore, and most of them don't. But why were they so important? It was because God had set up the Jewish nation to look and act and feel different to their pagan neighbors, so that the pagan neighbors would ask the Jews, why do you do these things that are so different from our lifestyle? And then, of course, they would say, because our God tells us to. And that would open the door to talk to them about the true God. Well, that was the whole point, is to be a light to the rest of the world. And what did Jesus find when he went into the heartbeat of the Jewish nation, the temple, where God is to be worshipped and to be espoused to the world and taught to the Gentiles, to the pagans? What did he find? He found a house of thieves, a den of thieves, he called it. The people that should have been the ones that were setting the example, the high priests and the other priests of Israel, were not doing that. They were covetous, greedy. They were not teaching the people. They were holding them in ignorance about what the true God wanted and the relationship he wanted with them. They had put burdens of law and rules on these people, rules that they themselves did not even comply with. And they were shackling the people with this wrong impression of what God is. And Christ was ticked. I mean, more than ticked. He was righteously angry to the point that, he was overturning the money changing tables. He was hurting their business. He was hitting them where it hurt in their pocketbook. And he was angry. And you say, well, that's very interesting, J. Lenora, but what does that have to do with fig tree? If you remember back in the Old Testament, the idea of the good life, the blessed life, was every man sitting under his own fig tree and his own vineyard. This was a symbol of plenty and blessing of God, allegedly. That was just the way of talking about it. Peace in the kingdom. Okay? Because if you're off in war and all, you're obviously not sitting under a fig tree with your own vineyard. Well, the idea of the figs and the fig tree eventually became kind of a symbol of the rulers of Israel, particularly the religious rulers. Because think about what a fig tree does. A fig tree provides nourishment, sustenance to people. And that was exactly what the religion, the relationship with God was supposed to do for the common people. And what had happened? The higher ups in the religious system were not giving that. Oh, they claimed to be, just like that fig tree, even though it was not time for having figs. What did it do? It had put out its leaves, making people think that there was going to be sustenance and help there. And then when they reached out for that help, when people went to the religious leaders of Israel, did they get any help? Did they get any sustenance? No, they did not. Just like that fig tree did not give off what it claimed to have. It was advertising with those leaves that it could be a help, but it was delivering nothing. And that is why Christ cursed it. Not because it was a fig tree, but because of what that fig tree was symbolic of. The leadership, the frankly evil at that point, religious leadership of Israel. Now what was he doing? He was basically removing their ministry. He was saying, you know what? You haven't done it well, and somebody else is from now on going to take over that role. Now, we need to be careful, because this is very similar to what Christ said in Revelation. In the letters to the churches, which are meant to be letters to the Christian community, warning us, we are those churches. We are all those churches. And to one of those churches, he said, if you don't get straight, if you don't start acting right, I will remove your lampstand. He said, what does that even mean? It means he will remove your ministry. He will remove the opportunity for you to be that light to the world. Be careful. We don't want to be the fig tree that's cursed. And we don't want our light stand, our opportunity to shine brightly for others and lead them to the true God, to be taken away from us because we have not lived up to what we were supposed to do. Visit me tomorrow for the next edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. Go out and make it a great day.